I very recently made over $100,000 for one of our clients, and one of the things that I noticed from making that amount of money is that selling people is extremely fucking easy. It genuinely is super duper easy whenever you have a good enough product and you're selling that product to the ideal client and the ideal person. If you have those two things, I promise you, you will make so much fucking money that it's just insane. And you're probably thinking like, oh, like $100,000 is not that much, or who knows, you might be thinking that's a lot. But I mean, 100K, I'll give you some context. For example, we were doing a webinar for this client. That's exactly how we ended up making that much money. We did a webinar for him and we had maybe 500 signups. We had like 300 people on live and we ended up closing like, fuck. I mean, I guess I won't give myself all the props because this client is extremely good at speaking and he's extremely good whenever it comes to just communicating with a crowd. And I think he did a fantastic job on pitching the value stack that I gave him and just basically going through the entire webinar flow that we had prepped for him. He fucking crushed it with that. But more than anything, I think thing that made this webinar crush so good is the ideal people and the audience that was actually watching him, watching that pitch. For example, if he had given that pitch to 10,000 people in Africa or in some other foreign country, he might have been able to close a lot of people. But based off of his context and based off of how he went about pitching this webinar, he would have not closed all the people he closed in the 400 or the 300 people that he had live. And versus in contrast, he wouldn't have been able to close as many people in an audience full of, I don't know, people who aren't his ICP in a 10,000 person crowd. Versus in contrast, the amount of ICPs that he had in that 400 person audience, it's just insane. Like it kind of just strengthened that all these growth operators are doing all these things that are like, oh yeah, you need to come up with all these sales tactics and one-click closes and boost AOV by adding order bumps and increase the LTV by doing all this stuff. Like all that stuff is fancy and all that stuff does help make more money. But at the end of the day, the thing that matters the most whenever it comes to making money with your clients, it really just comes down to the increasing conversions, is having an extremely good product and selling that product to an extremely specific ICP that has a very, very strong pain and a very, very strong desire to fix that pain. And your product is exactly what fixes that pain. It's really, that's what it comes down to. In sales, I'm personally not a huge sales guy. Like I'm not a full Wall Street type of guy, but I have noticed that the people who get the most sales in whatever it is they're selling is because they believe in what they're selling and they know that what they're selling is extremely good and they know who to sell to. That's exactly why whenever you go into a sales call, the first thing that people will usually do is they will consult you. They will ask you and they will basically be like a doctor. They'll see if the product that they're selling is actually meant for you. And if it's not, then they'll pitch you somewhere else or they'll send you somewhere else. And if it is, then they'll be doing an extremely good job of closing you. I mean, it's really what it comes down to, all psychology. It's understanding what people are doing and what they want and knowing what levers to pull to close them. And I mean, it really just comes down to product and product market fit. And I know Naval talked about product market founder fit, and that's one of the most important things whenever it comes to being a founder. But if you're a growth operator, you really, really, really need to obsess over the ICP and what their pain points are. You need to understand who that person is, and you need to be able to frame the product because that's another pretty big thing. Is all these people have these extremely good products, but they won't frame them in the right way that it sticks out to their ICP. For example, there was this client that we were working with that had this Apex product. That's exactly what it was called. It was called the Apex product. And the average person is like, what the fuck is an Apex product? No one knows what the fuck an Apex product is. But we ended up reframing that and rephrasing it and basically changing the format and how we pitched it. And instead of it being called the Apex product, she named it the Get Your First Client in 30 Days product. So it was an extremely different shift and an extremely different frame. And the amount of conversions that he got from the new framing were just insane. It was the exact same product. It was the exact same thing. Only thing we changed was the framing and how we named the product. All that happened, all that we ended up changing. So you don't really need to obsess over all these fancy tactics and all these fancy things. And basically like AOV and having order bumps and having this extremely fancy email sequence when it really just comes down to two things. The person that you're selling to and what you're selling to that person. And if you can get those two things down, you will make a fuck ton of money and you will make a lot more fucking money than the person who's obsessing over all these fancy strategies and all these fancy techniques to maximize sales. It really just comes down to that. And if there's one exercise that I would personally do is training one GPT. That's something that we have. That's something that helps me a shit ton. Is I have one GPT that I trained on the best tactics in terms of conversions and in terms of just growing a business. And that, I guess you could say, Growth Operator AI it's awesome. I mean, I wouldn't say it's life changing, but it's extremely good for helping me brainstorm, and it just kind of helping me bounce ideas back and forth with it. And whenever I have an idea for a product, it'll help me kind of reframe it and rephrase it. And yeah, it's just a fantastic little tool that I've created for myself that I guess PJ helped me create it. But yeah, I won't go into too much detail about that. If you do want me to go into detail on how I make AIs for myself to help me, I mean, maximize what it is that I do, I'd be happy to do so. But yeah, leave that in the comments. Even this video is probably going to get like 2 views. But yeah, peace.